To say that I am shocked by the massive overhaul in quality between Smile 1 and Smile 2 is definitely an understatement. To me, it's pretty clear that Finn was flexing his creative muscles with his other projects, and when he got the chance to have a ton of money behind him and a ton of backing, and when he had that, I guess, overall confidence from his other projects, he really showed up in a big way, and it's good for him. For context, I didn't really like the first Smile movie, and I have a whole video on why I didn't like it. So I didn't go into this movie with high hopes or anything that it would be some kind of masterpiece. I really was just going into it with the mindset of I probably will like it more than I liked the first movie. And imagine my surprise when I got one of the best horror movies of the year. Like this year, I was geared up for some bangers. Longlegs looked really promising, Maxine looked really promising, and to be completely honest, I was pretty devastated when nothing that I was really hyped for panned out. I wasn't even really looking forward to seeing this movie. I just wanted to see it, I guess kind of out of obligation because I saw the first one. But now I love it. It came out of left field and I was blown away, but I am really heavily impressed by how Parker has really restructured his creative vision for this franchise and this movie in particular. And of course, I want to talk about it. So this is a warning. If you haven't seen this movie yet, do that. I don't want you to miss out on the experience, and I'm going full review, spoilers, analysis in this video. So if you haven't seen it, maybe go see it first. I'll be giving a brief summary and outlining all of the parts of the movie that I thought were creative and added to the storytelling elements, as well as doing a slight analysis on it. So without further ado, let's talk about Smile 2. We're introduced to Naomi Scott, who plays Sky Riley, a struggling pop star who is on a mission to revamp her public image and deal with her mental health/substance abuse issues. Her mother and manager are constantly pressuring her into things that she doesn't want to do, and it seems like no one around her really understands her. One night after an arduous choreography session, she asks a high school friend turned dealer if she can grab some pills from him for her back. She was in a car accident previously, which killed her boyfriend and almost killed her, but definitively left her with physical scars and ailments. Her friend Lewis starts acting strange, and eventually he picks up a weight and begins bashing it against his own face, eventually killing him. Sky knows that because of her previous substance abuse issues, that it's a bad idea to call the police and tell them about Lewis, so she leaves. She tries to go on with her life as normal, but the incident is clearly taking a toll on her. Her mother tells her that she should call her best friend Gemma, that she had a falling out with, to go on her tour with her, so she'll feel more comfortable. She's also pressured into an appearance for a friend that will be relevant later. We see Sky's reality start to distort, slowly at first. She hears strange things, sees Lewis in the shadows and in the mirror. She assumes that this is a byproduct of keeping her deepest secret, or what we think is her deepest secret. Eventually, she calls Gemma because she just feels so uncomfortable. Gemma agrees to come and visit her, but before she shows up, Sky is in her apartment and things seem a little off. The Voss water product placement she guzzled down is now broken on the floor. It was steady on the counter before that point. There are a man's clothes in the hallway of her high-rise apartment. At the end of the trail of clothes, she sees a man and recognizes this man as the stalker from her signing earlier in that day. Or I don't know, maybe it was the day before, I can't really tell. Either way, this man is naked and he runs towards Sky, who runs towards the door where Gemma is at as she opens it. She feels relief and invites Gemma in, but it seems like Sky's sense of time has been wholly distorted at this point. Sky and Gemma talk about what's been happening to make her feel so paranoid. Gemma is a breath of fresh air for the movie. She acts as kind of a light comic relief, especially in relation to Sky's very intense demeanor throughout the entire runtime. Gemma stays the night, and some weird things start to happen when Sky has a dream about the car accident she was in. There are tons of imposing scenes where she has vivid flashbacks about her accident. Brutal. There's no background score or lead up to the images. You just kind of see them. It's just the sound of her screaming and the intense visuals of someone who looks like they're in so much pain physically and mentally. It's disturbing. Each time this happens, we see more and more details of the accident, as if it's unfolding for Sky in her memory as well as the audience. Sky starts talking to Gemma about her dream, and it seems as if she's going to tell her something important when Gemma, out of nowhere, says Sky is a bad person. Sky slowly turns to look at Gemma, and she has a demented smile on her face, the same one Lewis had. Then Gemma opens her mouth, and her eyes and mouth emit lights like a car. And it's a big jump scare, a good jump scare. Next thing Sky knows, Gemma is making her coffee, and it's morning. She has a bunch of stuff to do to prepare for her tour, so that is what she's doing for the day. From there, she just kind of spirals. She accuses people of things that they didn't do. She's seeing things and feeling things that aren't there. She's having meltdowns, and this causes everyone to kind of question her sobriety, which is tough for her. The entity is making her go mad. There is actually this really funny scene at the benefit that she was supposed to do for her friend, and it's a benefit for underprivileged kids. And she ends up pushing this old lady off of the stage in her mania. It's really funny. And it's also pretty embarrassing on top of that. Meanwhile, she's getting text messages from an unknown number, and she finally decides to answer the person when they tell her that she is not alone and that what she's seeing is real. She meets up with the unknown caller, and it turns out it's a man and his brother had been haunted by the entity. He tells her he can help her by killing her, stopping her heart and bringing her back to life. The entity needs a living host, and if she's dead, it has nothing to attach itself to. Then it's presumably going to leave, I guess. This doesn't really make any sense, but I'll get into that a little bit later. She declines the offer, and things get worse for her. She starts to hallucinate. There are dancers in her apartment trying to attack her. It's actually a really cool scene. During this encounter, she hits her head and ends up in the hospital. Her mom turns into the entity, and all hell breaks loose. Her mom starts stabbing herself, but then suddenly Sky is holding the piece of the mirror that was stabbing her, and she has blood all over her. In a manic scene, she escapes from the hospital, and Gemma is there to bring her coffee, presumably because she just wanted to visit her at the hospital, and they steal a car together. Gemma is like a light at the end of the tunnel for Sky and kind of for the audience too. She tells Sky that she is here for her no matter what, and that they're ride or die. Then Sky gets a phone call from Gemma. Turns out none of it was real. Gemma was the entity the entire time. And it's a devastating blow. Sky is tired of the bullshit, and she tells the entity, demands the entity that she is in control. And she starts taking a little more control, or what looks like a little more control at this point. Meets up with the unknown caller guy at some warehouse because she's ready to enact their plan. Their plan is that it's kind of stupid, so I really just don't want to talk about it, but he's going to stop her heart. It's here we learn that what went down the night that the accident happened was a lot more complicated than what we have been kind of fed throughout the movie. So on the night of the accident, Paul, Sky's boyfriend, and Sky had been arguing in the car. It seems like it's probably an incredibly toxic relationship, plus there's substance abuse in the mix, so it makes it even more complex. She's upset, and Paul starts to mock her. She absolutely loses her mind, and she grabs the wheel of the car, she yanks it over, and they both go off a cliff. Paul, obviously, he dies, and the big secret that she's harboring is that she killed her boyfriend, and it's eating her from the inside out. In the last scene, she confronts the entity and tells it that she has the power, but she doesn't. And soon the scene morphs into a stage for everyone to see her, as the entity takes her life and spreads the horrid disease of trauma far and wide through her audience. I'm not going to say that the first Smile had bad cinematography, but there was also nothing totally noteworthy about what I was seeing on screen. It looked like every other movie, and while there were things here and there that stood out, it was mostly lackluster. Smile 2, however, was beautifully shot from start until finish. The lighting was incredible. There was a dark, moody atmosphere that really played well into the story. I feel like they tried to do this in the first movie, but that they were not fully committed in that movie, so it didn't come off as nice, I guess. There was this blue hue over a couple of scenes that made it feel gritty, and to be honest, it sort of felt like a comic book movie, if that makes sense. I could see the entire movie being some sort of graphic novel. It helps that Sky lives in a city that lends to that, older looking architecture that you see a lot of times in graphic novels. There are a lot of scenes where you can see different things in the background that are relevant to what the audience is thinking. For instance, someone inscribed or graffitied on a bench seat where Sky was sitting when she met up with the man, and it says, "You're on it. And it's like an ode to the audience, like, hey, we get it. She's screwed. There's no getting out of this. There's no beating this monster. It's not something that it's fully focused on. It's not entirely subtle either, but it's subtle enough that you can call it like a small detail. And I love small details because it immerses me in the world. Camera angles were good, but they were also kind of a lot at the same time because there were a lot of close-ups, and it was fine for some of it, but I also felt like I wanted them to zoom out so many times so I could envision more of what that scene had to offer. While I understand that close-ups give you a more intense look at the character's emotions and it's used to make you kind of feel uncomfortable, maybe even claustrophobic, I like that, but I also think it could have been toned down because it happened so often here. The camera work otherwise was amazing. You got to really linger on uncomfortable things for not too long, but for long enough. The jump scares were fully earned and very well placed. The idea of making her a pop star alone was solid because there are so many fun elements to play with when it comes to visuals and world building. The exaggerated makeup and costumes that are required for large productions like concerts all feel really fake and a bit alien. The scene where the entity takes shape in the form of her entire dance team was freaking awesome and it was intense. Loved the natural movements of the dancers and the fact that they weren't CGI'd. Shout out to not being CGI'd. That is a concept that you could never explore without making her a pop star. I guess you could have made her a dancer, but it's bigger and more bombastic to make her a pop star. And the stakes are higher with this concept too. The world is watching her. She can be recognized and scrutinized publicly, and she is. Her own world is alienating to her. She has no idea what anyone's intentions are, and that's just how she feels before the entity. Her world just keeps getting smaller and smaller as the movie goes on. She does this to herself by not freeing herself from her secrets, and by shutting people out that she loves. Mostly because she can't tell them her secrets. On top of this, her coping mechanisms are not working as intended. I think one of the things that is important to acknowledge is that sometimes there is not enough deep breathing in the world to get you through. I enjoyed being able to explore what it looks like when someone is at the end of their rope and they've exhausted all of their coping mechanisms because I don't feel like that's done enough in, media. Because usually they either don't have any coping mechanisms at all or they have maladaptive coping mechanisms that fall apart, obviously, because they're maladaptive. Skye has such a complex life and is an emotionally exhausting character, to be completely honest. But by the end, you are rooting for her to take control of her life. You can see that that is what she wants. She wants to tell her secrets and gain the trust back from her loved ones. She self-reflects many times on how she pushes people away, and it's hard not to when you're hurting. But it is necessary to free yourself from the burden of sin, of wrongdoing, of the burden of punishing yourself even. And with Skye, it's even more complicated because she is apologizing to the entire world for something that's going on in her personal life. Everything she feels is covered up. Her trichotillomania is a metaphor slice of pie when her mother says, "We can cover that up," referring to an extreme bald spot. Everything in her world is shallow and covered up, so it makes sense that she doesn't really want to get into a deeper spot with the people that are around her because they're just very shallow. So I'll leave you and this review with this. When asked to go on stage in a certain costume for her tour, Skye tells her mother that she refuses. You can see her scar through the costume, and she doesn't want anyone to see her quote-unquote ugly. Her mom thinks that she's being silly, but agrees. And at the end of the movie, she's wearing that very same costume at her concert. Everyone sees her quote-unquote ugly now, and she has to come to terms with it. Will her fans accept her? Probably not, because she's dead now, and presumably so is her audience, so... Did you see Smile? Did you like it? Did you like when she downed gallons of water in seconds, making you feel sick with an overt, ridiculous product placement for Voss? Did you like that? Anyway, drop a comment about how it made you feel, and I will see you next time. Bye!